When we look at like a massive gleaming skyscraper, we tend to, well, we obsess over the visible stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
The surface layer.
Right. The glass facade, the panoramic views from the penthouse, or even just like the speed of the elevators. We totally judge the entire structure based solely on the surface layer that we happen to be touching.
Yeah, we prioritize the interface. I mean, it is human nature, really, to focus on the things we interact with daily. And we just completely ignore the structural realities that, actually make those interactions possible.
Nobody stands on the sidewalk taking pictures of the concrete foundation, right? The stuff hidden 50 feet underground.
Definitely not.
But the second you decide you want to add 10 more floors to that skyscraper or maybe build a high-speed rail station underneath it, suddenly that invisible foundation is literally the absolute only thing that matters.
Because it dictates the boundary of your reality.
Yeah.
I mean, if that foundation is compromised, you are not building up. You're merely waiting for a structural collapse under the weight of your own ambition.
Wow, yeah. And that invisible make-or-break foundation is exactly what we are exploring today. So, welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
If you're listening to this, you are the kind of curious learner who really wants to see past the facade, to understand how the machinery of the world actually functions. And today, we have a fascinating stack of sources for you.
We really do.
We are pulling from a highly detailed analytical article and a deeply strategic blog post, and both of them are dissecting this enterprise architecture concept known as clean core.
Right. And it's a concept that has been gaining serious momentum over the last few years. If we visualize what this means for a modern corporation, imagine these shifting architectural cityscapes that transform into intricate digital wireframes.
Oh, I like that image.
Because, enterprise architecture is far more than just software sitting on a remote server somewhere. It literally defines what a business is capable of executing out in the real world.
Exactly. So the mission for this deep dive is to decode a concept that, well, on the surface, it sounds like the driest IT jargon imaginable, right?
Very dry.
Yeah. But it's actually the secret foundation for the future of any major organization. Okay, let's unpack this. Whether you're a seasoned tech expert or just like a business leader trying to figure out how your company is going to survive the AI revolution, understanding clean core is the ultimate shortcut to seeing the matrix of corporate technology.
But to do that effectively, we have to start by carrying down the current mainstream perception of the term. Because the way most organizations understand clean core today is dangerously incomplete.
Yeah, the sources were pretty clear on that.
Oh, very clear. It is leading a lot of very smart people down a blind alley.
So let's lay out that mainstream perception first, just to get it out of the way. In a lot of organizations, especially those dealing with massive environments like SAP's S4HANA or other really big cloud ERPs, those enterprise resource planning systems, clean core is treated purely as a technical preference.
Right, like an IT mandate.
Exactly. The IT department sends out a memo basically saying, hey, we need to minimize custom code, we need to stop modifying the standard software processes, and we need to do this so our software upgrades are just easier next year.
Which is wild because that reduces a massive strategic imperative into like a minor administrative chore.
Totally.
Treating clean core as merely a technical preference is just missing the forest for the trees.
It sounds identical to, well, renting an apartment.
How so?
Like the landlord hands you the keys and says, you can live here, but please don't paint the walls neon green. And definitely do not knock down that load-bearing partition, because when you move out, I want my security deposit to cover the cleaning.
Right. Just keep it standard.
Yeah, it just sounds like basic technical hygiene. Like if I am an IT director, keeping the system vanilla is just a way to make my own life easier during the next vendor upgrade. So why is it so crucial to frame this as a strategic business issue rather than just IT keeping the house tidy?
Because if you frame it merely as IT hygiene, it will inevitably be deprioritized the exact moment the business demands a shiny new feature.
Oh, that makes sense. The business always wins that fight.
Always. Reframing this is crucial. Clean core is not just hygiene. It is the fundamental architectural prerequisite for the intelligent enterprise.
Okay, prerequisite.
A standard, unmodified system of record is the only environment where things like artificial intelligence, mass automation, and real-time compliance can actually operate as functional capabilities.
Meaning they actually work out in the wild.
Exactly. If you don't have a clean core, those initiatives just turn into failed, spectacularly expensive science experiment.
So you are drawing a really hard line between like doing something in a controlled lab versus deploying it in a messy, chaotic, real-world corporate environment.
Yes. And the sources make this point aggressively. I mean, if a company treats a clean core as an optional, nice-to-have standard for their developers, they are making a fatal strategic error. There's actually a specific quote from the material that highlights the stakes perfectly.
Oh, I think I remember this one. Go ahead.
It says, clean core is not where you end up after years of technical debt reduction. It is where you decide to start, and the decision determines what you are capable of building.
Man, where you decide to start, that is powerful. But if keeping the core clean is the only way to build the future, it brings up a really glaring paradox.
Which is?
Well, why do so many companies consistently fail to maintain it? Like, reading through the source material, it becomes incredibly obvious that contaminating the core software is essentially the default state of most major corporations.
It really is. And to understand that default state, we have to look at the organizational traps that companies fall into. I mean, no IT department sets out to maliciously sabotage their own systems, right?
Right. Nobody wants to break their own stuff.
Yeah.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second and advocate for the businesses making these apparent mistakes.
Sure, go for it.
The pressure to customize a massive software system comes from a very real operational necessity. Imagine I am running a global logistics company. I buy a standard ERP system, but standard functionality doesn't know how I calculate specific, say, cold storage tariffs in my European warehouses.
Of course not.
Or what if I have highly unique local tax laws or a niche regulatory report I have to file every single month just to keep my operating license? If I don't build those specific rules into the software, my business literally stops functioning.
And you're completely right. The business absolutely needs those functions. No one in these sources is arguing that a global logistics company should ignore its local tax laws.
Right. So where's the disconnect?
The architectural error isn't in recognizing that a gap exists between the standard, out-of-the-box software and your unique business requirement. The fatal mistake is entirely about where the company decides to put the logic to fix that gap.
Ah, meaning they are injecting that logic into the wrong part of the building.
Precisely. Instead of putting that specific, unique business logic into an external layer like a dedicated environment specifically meant to handle custom rules, they embed it directly into the ERP core.
They inject custom code directly into the foundational source code. I know in the SAP world, the sources refer to these as Z programs.
Yes, exactly. Z programs.
And for anyone listening who isn't deep in that specific ecosystem, a Z program is essentially SAP-specific jargon for custom software routines that a company writes and injects straight into the standard SAP environment.
Right. And that injection is the contamination.
Yeah.
They take those custom tables, those Z programs, those country-specific configurations, and they just wire them directly into the beating heart of the core transaction system.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this contamination isn't a linear problem.
Not at all.
It's not a simple equation where adding one custom tax rule equals one standard unit of IT maintenance. It compounds.
It creates an incredibly fragile web of dependencies. Let's trace your logistics company example.
Okay, let's do it.
Say you have embedded 50 unique custom programs into your ERP over the last 5 years to handle various warehouse tariffs.
Seems realistic.
Yeah. But then, when your software vendor releases a critical security patch or a major functional upgrade, you can no longer simply install it.
Right, because my custom tariff calculation might rely on a specific line of code that the vendor just changed or completely deleted.
Exactly. So that simple upgrade now transforms into a terrifying multi-million-dollar regression testing project.
Oh, wow.
Your IT team has to manually test every single standard vendor update against that tangled web of custom interactions just to ensure they didn't, accidentally break the company's ability to ship products or pay employees.
It is the ultimate game of Jenga. You have carefully swapped out dozens of standard, perfectly measured wooden blocks for your own weirdly shaped, custom-carved blocks.
That's a great way to put it.
And every single time you try to touch the tower or move a piece, the entire structure just shakes.
That is the exact dynamic.
Yeah.
And our sources offer a defining quote on this phenomenon. They state, every customization embedded in the ERP core is a mortgage on future capability. The payment terms are upgrade complexity, integration debt, and reduced AI readiness compounding with every subsequent customization.
Wow. A mortgage on future capability. That hits hard.
It
So you're basically taking out a high-interest loan just to get a quick IT fix out the door today.
Exactly.
You are borrowing against what your company will be able to execute 5 years from now.
And the interest payments on that technical debt eventually just consume the entire IT budget. You end up spending all your money just keeping the lights on.
But, it is one thing to deal with a fragile Jenga tower internally. Like, if you only update your systems every few years, maybe you can tolerate the pain of a massive regression test.
Maybe. But that luxury is disappearing.
Exactly, because the pressure isn't just coming from the IT department anymore. The external world is suddenly demanding a speed that a fragile tower simply cannot handle.
Yes. And this introduces a massive external threat outlined in the sources.
Yeah.
They call it continuous transaction controls.
Right. CTCs.
Governments and regulatory bodies globally have completely changed their operating models.
Yeah.
They're no longer waiting for the end of the month or the end of the quarter to review your financial reports.
So what do they want now?
They increasingly require compliance logic to execute at the exact millisecond a transaction occurs.
So, if my logistics company ships a pallet of goods in, say, Brazil or Europe, the government wants to know the tax implications of that specific pallet before the truck even leaves the warehouse.
They want that data in real time, communicated directly to government platforms via APIs.
Wow.
And more importantly, if a tax mandate changes on a Tuesday, your systems must be entirely compliant with the new calculation by Wednesday.
Okay, let me push back on the difficulty of this for a second.
Go.
If I have my big, heavily customized ERP system and the government changes a tax rate, why can't my IT team just go into that custom Z program we built and update the math? Like, why does real-time compliance necessitate a clean core?
Well, it goes back to the structural dilemma we just diagnosed. ERPs, especially heavily customized monolithic ones, are simply not designed to be updated at regulatory speed.
Oh, because of the Jenga tower issue.
Exactly. You cannot safely pull blocks out of a compromised Jenga tower overnight. Any change to that core requires weeks of testing to ensure you didn't break a completely unrelated supply chain module.
Right.
Furthermore, the internal layers of an older ERP are not built to maintain persistent, high-speed API connections with external government databases.
You are asking a heavy, slow-moving internal transaction ledger to suddenly act like a nimble, real-time web application.
And it buckles under the pressure. So organizations face a brutal choice. They either try to cram even more custom integration logic into the ERP, making the Jenga tower violently unstable,
Which sounds terrible.
or they attempt to build a clunky side integration that bypasses the ERP's natural security completely. And both options create endless maintenance obligations.
Okay, so if the customized core is failing under this regulatory pressure, what is the actual mechanism that Clean Core uses to solve it?
It solves it through a strict division of labor using something the sources call a data orchestration layer.
A data orchestration layer, okay.
Yeah. In a modern architecture, the ERP is stripped of all that custom tax math. Its only job is to generate clean, standard transaction data. It logs that a shipment occurred, and it emits that event.
It just states the pure, unvarnished facts of the transaction.
Yes. Then, that dedicated external data orchestration layer intercepts the data flow. That external layer holds all the complex, localized compliance logic. It catches the generic shipment event, applies the specific Brazilian or European tax calculations, and sends the final formatted data directly to the government API.
Hold on, though. If I'm moving all my complex logic out of my ERP and building an entirely separate orchestration layer, aren't I just creating two massive IT systems to manage instead of one?
It's a fair question.
Isn't that just shifting the headache to a different server?
It sounds like it, but the architecture of that external layer is fundamentally different. An orchestration layer is highly modular and event-driven.
Okay.
It is designed specifically for rapid changes. When a mandate changes in a specific jurisdiction, you are only updating one isolated module in that external layer. You do not have to take down your entire global ERP system, and you do not have to regression test your warehouse management modules just to update a local tax rate.
Oh, wow. It completely decouples the speed of the business from the speed of the foundation.
Exactly.
So if regulators are forcing us out of the core today, the sources make a really compelling argument that artificial intelligence is going to permanently lock us out tomorrow.
Absolutely. AI is the real tipping point here.
Right. So if I am a CEO deploying a new AI system, why does an autonomous AI care if my IT team wrote a sloppy custom Z program a decade ago?
Well, what's fascinating here is the trajectory of enterprise AI. We're rapidly moving away from simple chatbots and toward a paradigm the sources call the Internet of Agents.
The Internet of Agents, explain what that looks like in practice.
We are talking about distributed, highly specialized artificial intelligence systems operating completely autonomously across a company's financial and operational landscape.
Like little digital workers just running around.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
These are agents designed to automatically validate vendor compliance, optimize global cash flows, detect supply chain anomalies, and execute routine purchasing decisions,
All on their own.
all simultaneously without a human being ever pressing a button.
Okay, so if these autonomous AI agents are like, say, high-speed bullet trains flying across a company's digital network, then leaving custom logic, proprietary data structures, and weirdly formatted fields scattered throughout your core ERP is essentially like leaving massive boulders sitting directly on the train tracks.
That analogy is flawless. That is exactly what it's like. And the crucial distinction here is human interpretive capacity.
How so? Like, how does a human handle the boulder versus the train?
Well, if a human accountant looks at a spreadsheet and sees that a revenue field is formatted bizarrely because of some custom software rule written in 2015, the human pauses.
Right, they scratch their head for a second.
They look at the context, they realize what happened, they manually adjust the number, and they move on. A human steps around the boulder.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But an AI agent operating at machine speed does not pause. It lacks the historical context to understand why your specific company decided to alter the universal definition of a data field.
Oh, so when the bullet train hits the boulder, it doesn't try to solve the riddle of the boulder.
It either fails silently, meaning the agent just halts its process and you might not notice the broken workflow for weeks, or, far more dangerously, it ingests the contaminated data and generates incorrect outputs at a massive automated scale.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It is. Suddenly, your AI is executing thousands of highly optimized, mathematically perfect cash flow decisions based entirely on hallucinated or misformatted internal data.
The AI does exactly what you told it to do, but it's reading a corrupted map.
Exactly. This is the ultimate technical reality. Clean core is the mandatory substrate for AI. It is the only architectural model that guarantees standard, predictable, machine-readable data.
Which gives us the most visceral quote from the blog post we reviewed. I loved this one. It says, "Every customization embedded in your ERP core is a vote against your AI future."
That's the one.
I mean, you are actively choosing to sabotage your own machine learning initiatives every single time you take the shortcut of customizing the foundational software.
It is an invisible tax that will eventually bankrupt a company's technological ambitions.
Okay, so we have established a fairly grim picture of the current state of things.
Very grim.
A contaminated core breaks upgrades, it fails at real-time regulatory compliance, and it basically acts as a concrete wall blocking AI adoption. But we cannot leave our listeners standing in the rubble here. How do companies actually escape this architectural trap? The Jenga tower has already been built over the last 20 years. Are the sources seriously suggesting that companies must burn their entire IT infrastructure to the ground and start completely over?
Thankfully, no. Greenfield rebuilds, burning the data center down and starting from absolute zero are rarely practical for a functioning global enterprise.
I can't imagine a CEO signing off on that easily.
Exactly. The practical, actionable path outlined in the material is a strategy called progressive externalization.
Progressive externalization. Breaking the terminology down, I assume that means slowly, methodically moving the messy logic to the outside over time?
Yes. You don't do it all at once. You audit your existing landscape. You identify the most painful, constraining customizations currently choking your core system, and you migrate them to external capability layers incrementally.
So if this business logic doesn't live in the ERP anymore, where exactly does it go? The sources break this down into 4 specific external layers. Walk us through the geography of this new architecture.
Sure. This is really the definitive blueprint for the modern enterprise. First, your compliance and tax logic. As we detailed earlier, that moves entirely to the data orchestration layer.
Right, the API hub thing.
Yeah. It sits outside the core, intercepting data flows, and is built specifically to operate at regulatory speed.
Because keeping the regulators happy is usually the most immediate existential threat, right? You don't want to get shut down.
Exactly. You tackle the immediate threat first. Second, your reporting and analytics logic must move to dedicated external analytics platforms or data lakes. You should never burden your transactional ERP engine with heavy, multidimensional historical data analysis.
But wait, how do those external analytics platforms get the data if the ERP isn't running the reports? Like, are they just guessing?
No. Through standardized read-only APIs. The ERP pushes a continuous clean stream of standard data into the data lake, and the analytics platform does the heavy mathematical lifting completely independently of the transaction system.
Leaving the ERP to just do what it does best, record transactions quickly. Okay, what about the AI? Where does that go?
Third, your AI and automation logic lives in intelligent agent frameworks.
Okay.
These are specialized layers that sit on top of the entire architecture, ingesting that clean, standardized data stream we just talked about. And finally, the fourth piece is integration logic.
Integration logic, meaning how the ERP talks to the dozens of other software tools a company uses.
Right, because right now, companies build custom point-to-point connections everywhere. Looks like a bowl of spaghetti.
Oh yeah, it's a mess.
In a clean core model, all integration logic lives in that external data orchestration layer. It acts as a universal central hub.
So the ERP only has to know how to talk to the hub. It emits one standard language, and the hub translates and routes that information to the warehouse software, the HR software, the banking portals, all of it.
Exactly. And the beauty is each of those four external layers, compliance, analytics, AI, and integration, can be updated, upgraded, or completely ripped out and replaced without ever touching the standard ERP core.
That sounds like a beautiful architectural theory. Truly. But when does a sprawling legacy corporation actually find the momentum to execute a massive untangling project like this? It sounds exhausting.
Well, the sources point to a massive inflection point happening right now. Thousands of companies are currently being forced into massive ERP migrations. They are moving to SAP S/4HANA, or they are transitioning to Oracle Fusion Cloud environments. That migration is the forcing function.
It is the moment of truth. You are essentially packing up your belongings to move into a brand new state-of-the-art house.
Yes, exactly.
It is the best possible moment to look at all the accumulated junk in your attic,
Yeah.
20 years of legacy technical debt, and decide whether you are going to drag all of it into the new living room or if you are going to start clean.
And the most important mindset shift required for that move is captured brilliantly in the source material. It says, clean core is not a starting condition you maintain. It is a discipline you practice.
Wow, a discipline you practice.
It is not a software package you buy. It is fundamental change in how every single technical and business decision is evaluated from that day forward.
It requires a massive culture shift. I mean, the business leaders and the IT architects have to fundamentally agree that protecting the foundation of the skyscraper is vastly more important than the temporary convenience of a quick custom fix.
Absolutely. Everyone has to be on the same page.
So what does this all mean? Let's synthesize this and bring it right back to you, the listener. The ultimate realization here is that clean core is not a constraint on the business itself.
Not at all.
That is the great illusion of this entire topic. Clean core is merely a strict constraint on where the business logic is allowed to live. And by enforcing that specific constraint, it massively expands what the business can actually achieve in the real world.
It constructs a reality where new global compliance requirements are just routine configuration tasks in an external layer rather than, full-blown corporate crisis projects.
Yeah.
It creates an environment where advanced AI agents can simply be activated and let loose on perfect data rather than requiring a 2-year, multi-million-dollar data normalization initiative first.
So the next time you are sitting in a strategy meeting and someone casually suggests building a quote-unquote quick custom workaround directly into a core system just to solve an immediate headache, you now understand the invisible compounding future cost of that decision.
Right.
You know that they aren't just solving today's problem, they are actively voting against the company's AI future.
And if we connect this architectural shift to the bigger picture, it raises an incredibly important and perhaps deeply radical question for the future of enterprise software.
Oh, lay it on us. What's the radical thought?
Well, we spent a lot of time discussing the Internet of Agents.
Right.
If the ultimate destiny of a clean core ERP is simply to generate perfect, standardized, machine-readable data for highly intelligent, autonomous external agent frameworks to act upon, will the traditional ERP user interface eventually disappear entirely?
Wait, are you suggesting the software itself becomes invisible?
Exactly. Are we moving toward a near future where human beings only ever interact with the external AI layers, where we just ask questions and give strategic commands in natural language to the agents, leaving the ERP itself as a completely dark, machine-only ledger running silently in the background without a single human ever logging into it?
A flawless, frictionless foundation buried 50 feet underground, supporting the entire weight of a towering digital skyscraper. without anyone ever needing to look at it.
Exactly.
That is a brilliant thought to leave you with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking the hard questions, keep looking past the facade to examine the foundation, and we will catch you next time.